Good afternoon, everyone. May I kindly have your attention? Thank you very much, distinguished delegates, and we are really delighted to have you with us in this side event, and also a big thank you to the panelists. We do welcome you to be with us for the next 1 hour or so as we navigate through this very important agenda item. Thank you and welcome. As I do that, I'll just go straight away to make my remarks, and then I'll hand over the baton to Ellen to continue the next chapter of this program. So thank you and welcome. My name is Anthony Morethi. I'm the alternate permanent rep at the Kenyan Mission and also the agriculture attaché. And I've also been the chair of the data session that we are going to have the endorsement possibly today, later in the afternoon. So thank you. I had the honor of serving as a rapporteur to the policy convergence process of the CFS workstream on strengthening collection and use of food security and nutrition data and related analysis tools. Together with fellow esteemed CFS members, we were able to discuss and negotiate a voluntary set of recommendations to help promote the use of data to guide FSN policy in a time where rapid technological advancement presents a new set of opportunities and challenges, and where international discussions on food security and nutrition require the collaboration of all stakeholders to make up for lost momentum during the geopolitical and economic challenges of the last several years. I'm happy to report that the policy convergence process was a success. With my fellow CFS members, we were able to come together and find common ground to establish proactive voluntary guidelines that truly encompass the multi-stakeholder spirit of CFS. As you are all likely aware, the US is a uniquely multi-stakeholder platform to discuss pressing issues related to food security and nutrition, giving voice to member countries, civil society, the private sector, and philanthropic organizations supported by a hardworking CFS Secretariat. The final negotiated policy recommendations represent a year's worth of work by some of the leading minds on food security and nutrition. As CFS members, we attended a series of open-ended working meetings followed by 2-week-long rounds of negotiations. The dedication and professionalism shown in the negotiations is a true testament to the goodwill and collaborative enthusiasm shown by my esteemed colleagues. This is no easy feat. The time commitment that CFS members showed and the willingness to discuss and find common ground on a rapidly developing but critical aspect of food security and nutrition data has indeed been inspirational to all of us, and it was indeed a pleasure working with everyone. However, there still remains significant work to be done by everyone engaged in this conversation. The policy convergence process and the voluntary policy guidelines are a first concrete step in coordinating with all stakeholders on how to promote and strengthen the collection and use of food security and nutrition data in an inclusive and a participatory process. Filling data gaps with high quality, timely and relevant food security and nutrition data at the subnational and local levels are needed to inform decision makers in the food and security and nutrition sector. Significant gaps remain. 92 countries have not conducted an agriculture census in the last 10 years, 52 of which have not been done in the last 20 years, and 10 of these countries have no agricultural census on record at all. Data is the fuel that powers progress in the food security and nutrition space and across all the SDGs. Stronger data systems are essential to good policy and foundational to the digital transformation and improvements in public services that will accelerate progress worldwide. The voluntary policy guidelines identify 5 key recommendations where the international community can work together to harness this progress while ensuring data protection and privacy and taking steps to address imbalances in power among actors with respect to generating, accessing, collecting, storing, processing, sharing, and using FSN data. We did have several milestones and outcomes. The policy convergence process was notable in that it stayed true to the original outlined mandate of the workstream and emphasized the importance of taking global multilateral discussions into account, as well as avoiding the duplication of processes. The policy convergence process is a testament to goodwill and finding common ground amongst a wide range of stakeholders, despite increasingly challenging economic and geopolitical circumstances. Members were able to work together and negotiate the data work streams in a timely and respective manner. The voluntary recommendations underscore the need for coordination surrounding data governance and encourages on capitalizing on the momentum, global multilateral discussions, such as the UN Statistics Commission, the UN Systems Chief Executive Board for Coordination, the SDG Summit, and the Digital Global Compact as part of the discussions surrounding the 2024 Summit of the Future, also potentially avoiding the duplication of processes. The voluntary guidelines are unique in that they encourage governments, with the support of international organizations and donors, to increase and sustain investment in the production of timely, quality, and reliable FSN data. This is a milestone, as the connection between data financing specific to food security and nutrition data has not been specifically encouraged in a multilaterally agreed context before. The voluntary recommendations especially emphasize the importance of diverse types of data, both qualitative and quantitative, in informing food security and nutrition policies. This is a milestone as it encourages the responsible use of new types of data being collected in informing policy. The recommendations encourage the promotion of FSN data use in decision-making processes. This involves explicitly fostering dialogue and collaboration amongst stakeholders, promoting the use of existing FSN data in advocacy efforts, and encouraging the use of varied data sources in informing FSN-related national legislation, as well as public policies. With these remarks, I thank you, and I welcome you again to this session. Thank you. Thank you very much. I now pass the baton to Ellen to continue the next part of the program. You have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everyone. And let me add my welcome to Tony's. And thank you, Tony, so much for your remarks, but most importantly, for your leadership as chair in the data negotiations. We really could not have gotten this far without you. I also want to thank everyone who is gathered here today. CFS Week is full of events, and we know you're also very busy. So I think you will find this panel thought-provoking and informative, and we will also be interested in your questions. So please hold those as we move through the panel. We do have a great group of speakers. But let me set the framework for this conversation. We all recognize that data, specifically improved data, is crucial for making informed decisions. This applies particularly for policymakers and farmers, especially as they confront climate change. 2 weeks ago, we hosted a number of roundtables here in Rome when U.S. Agriculture Undersecretary Robert Bonnie was in town. He was here to discuss farm-led, climate-smart agriculture. Nearly all of our conversations centered around the need for better data. Farmers need better data to inform their decisions, and policymakers need better data to incentivize farmers to undertake more climate-smart practices. There is some good news here. We're not starting from scratch. There are a number of tools available and under development that will allow countries to better measure, for example, greenhouse gas emissions from agriculture. But we also have a long way to go. And for the United States, it is imperative that farmers are involved in this process and also see benefits and innovations from the process. As many of you know, lots of these climate-smart practices improve efficiency and productivity for farmers, and they see immediate benefit when they more precisely apply fertilizers or water or other inputs. However, we also need to find ways to ensure farmers benefit from greenhouse gas reductions and carbon markets. And for that, we need better data. Today, our panelists will discuss a number of pressing issues when it comes to agricultural data. And let me just highlight each panelist and what they will focus on. To my left, we will hear from, and to your right, we will hear from Kyle Bridgeforth, a farmer from Alabama. Kyle owns and operates a large farm in the United States. He grows cotton, corn, soybeans, wheat, sorghum, and canola, and he will discuss how he uses data on his farm. Next, we will hear from Megha Desai. Ms. Desai coordinates the Self-Employed Women's Association, or SEVA, a large network of women farmers in India, covering 16 states and 2.6 million family farmers with a focus on marginalized small female farmers. She will discuss how she uses data in the work she does in economic development programs for women farmers. She will also talk about the importance of accurate gender disaggregated data. Our next panelist, Chris Hilbrunner from the U.S. Agency for International Development, will talk about data from a U.S. government perspective. And finally, we will hear from Mark Ball, the Global Head of Public Affairs from Syngenta, on how the private sector is enabling farmers to make better decisions based on data. So thank you again for being here. And now let me turn to our moderator, Jose, to open up the panel.
No, thank you, Ellen, very much. Of course, I'm very happy to be here. I'm Jose Rosero Moncayo. I'm the director of the Statistics Division of FAO. And I'm known here in this organization as the data guy, okay? I'm the person that has under his shoulders the production of food security statistics. So whenever you hear about these numbers of X million people suffering from hunger in the world, you know now who to blame, okay? Having said that, let's start the panel. And right now, what we are going to do is that each one of our panelists will have 7 minutes in order to make an intervention. And then we will go to a section of Q&A. So we will make specific questions. I do have one question for each one of them, in which we will like, of course, some remarks about the question. And then, of course, we want to hear from you. I'm more than sure that you have burning questions to make to all of our panelists, and you will have your opportunity. So please start thinking in the type of questions that you would like to address to the panelists. So let's start with Kyle.
Thank you very much. Again, I'm Kyle Bridgeforth, a row crop farmer from the United States. And data is essential to our operation. It's grown over the years to become an essential part of how we start the crop, how we cultivate it, how we harvest it. In a lot of ways, it's just as important as the crop that we're harvesting off the field. Not only us, but a lot of our supply chain depends on the metrics that are coming from the data regarding accurate supply and demand metrics, how much transport we're going to need throughout the coming months at harvest season, how much seed supply are we going to need to purchase, which requires a lot of forethought from our suppliers, all the way down to chemicals, so on and so forth. Accurate capturing of this data from an application standpoint is essential for us, our partners, our suppliers, and the overall ag economy in our area. So it's become, data has progressed from generations ago on the farm. It was an art. Soil temperatures, exact amount of seeds per acre, variable rates, all the precision ag applications that we have now weren't a part of the process. But over time, farming has gone from an art to a science. And it's mostly because of the data that's involved. A lot of the layers that we use now to plant and cultivate a productive crop is based on historical data and layers that we've put on based on the planting conditions that we have every spring. And that's a fortunate and beneficial tool that previous generations and years didn't have. And it's something that not only the farmers, but our buyers and everybody in the supply chain has become, it's become essential to everybody else's program as well. So it's something that needs to be very careful. It has to be accurate. It has to be learned and invested in every year, year in and year out. And it's became the main tool of growth, not just for our operation, but for a lot of the people that we're selling to also. The data that we use also has a market application. So it's not just for internal use. It's not just to become more efficient and maximize our own internal operation, but the data itself has a market application as far as it's the foundation for a lot of startups. It's the basis for a lot of decisions that everybody in the agricultural system is making decisions off of. Governmental bodies use this data to make accurate supply and demand reports. It's the foundation for a lot of industries and operations that are originated at a farm level. So it's something that has that much value as has a market application. And a lot of farmers use data as a secondary form of revenue. It's something that if it's captured correctly, if it's utilized in connection with a crop, it has a very definitive market value. And it's something that is not just for scale farmers. It can be your smaller shareholder farmers, specialty crop growers, large scale commodity producers, people in animal ag. Anyone that's capturing the data from their farm site can add that as something traceable to the crop that they're selling. So it's a secondary form of revenue. It's a new industry. It's a way to supplement farms, and it's something that every farmer can benefit from. It also gives farmers confidence in what they're doing next. So your data gives you the option to know what you have done in previous years. You can see the soil temperature when you're planting, see the conditions, see what crop you plan to plant, know the decisions that you've made in previous years, and use that knowledge to grow the best crop you possibly can for the upcoming season. The future of data is really going to be the exciting part of farming. Now that data is involved, we see a lot of industries laterally moving into the agricultural space. Tech, the financial industry, healthcare is becoming more involved in agriculture. Industries that we had never seen have a stake in agriculture before, at least not directly, are now directly coming to farms and wanting to be involved in the process. Data is the basis for that. The first thing any group wants to see is whichever piece of ag data is applicable to them. As long as you can capture and provide it, you have an interest to grow with that company. So we're seeing a lot of growth in that space where a farm site is a basis for a startup. It's the basis how they're bringing capital investors in and using a farm site on how they're going to grow their company. So data is a new industry in itself. It's become a new revenue stream. And for farmers, in a lot of ways, it should be proprietary. There's a lot of industries that are benefiting from this data, especially in an aggregated state. Farmers are the originators in it. And if there's going to be a new market space, a lot of benefit, a lot of capital raised on this farm-generated data, it's our view that farmers should have the ability to participate in that. And policy moving forward, thoughts moving forward, should consider how farmers are going to be involved in those discussions, how they can directly participate if their data is going to be the basis for industries moving forward. I recommend everybody go to solutionsfortheland.org. You can see a complete breakdown of our data principles and our suggestions and some of our background. And I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kyle. We really appreciate your insights from the farm, from the ground, and thank you. I know there'll be a number of questions that people have for you. We will continue to move forward and turn the floor over to our colleague, Megwa.
Thank you, and namaste everyone. A very good afternoon to the distinguished guest, panelist, and to brothers and sisters. I feel immense privilege to be here on behalf of 2.5 million small women family farmers. We heard the story of the farmer from US, and now we are going to hear the story of the small landholders who are owning the 1 or 2 bighas of land in India. So we work in 18 states of India, and we also work in the neighboring SAARC countries. Today we are talking about data and data-based decision making. So first of all, I would like to share profile of our members for whom today I'm here. So India is agrarian country, and most of the population, now the biggest in globe, and most of the population lives in rural area. And in rural area, agriculture, animal husbandry, and land-based activities are the prime activities. 70% as in numbers, people live in rural areas, and largely almost 85% are the family farmers who have a small land, and largely the responsibility of farming is on women, since men mostly migrate to the urban areas, because for the smallholders, farming with these current challenges of climate, recurring climate, in last season, almost 4 to 5 times climate events the farmers have seen. So it is not seen as most lucrative. And in that, if we talk about data, data is seen as an additional burden, because these small holders, they depend on the rain. They are rain-fed agriculture farmers. So the very first rain is the first one step to purchases, and that the data of previous years is not seen, which is a historical base, as my panelist also shared, that how we can use those historical data to make the decisions. So these smallholders, they purchase, as I said, on the very first rain, when the prices of the seeds and inputs are very high. And sometimes they even do not get what they want as a seed. And they have to depend on the local market, where they do not know about the quality. So, and second major challenge is women, though they are working hard in the field, bearing the heat, they are not recognized as a farmers because of the cultural and structural barriers. In our country, those who own the land, they are considered as a farmer. So women is not considered as a farmer, they do not have access to government schemes if they do not own land, or mainstream finance, or mainstream market. So these farmers, as I said, challenges of the climate is recurring now, and market is also, though they are working hard, the marketplaces are mainly male dominated, they can't go, and the money then goes in the hands of the male. And women can't decide afterwards on what they want to grow for the next season. So SEWA initiated agriculture campaign since 1995 with 4 pillars of strengthening the input side, capacity building, access to mainstream finance, and access to mainstream market, and thereby reducing the cost and improving the bargaining power, where organizing is a key, where farmers are organized in commodity clusters and forming women's economic enterprises. there is a producer-owned company, which is called Rudy Multi-Trading Company. So the small and marginal farmers do not use data, as I said, they depend on the real-time situation and how to make them understand the value of the data, how they can make informed decision beforehand so they do not bear the cost of the prices. They can negotiate prices. They can decide on what to grow beforehand. So we have made the commodity clusters to address that. That is on the pilot basis. So the common commodity farmers in specific village, maybe 50 to 100 farmers, they get together, they are growing the similar commodity. So the inputs, the seed, the services of irrigation, the fertilizer, all these are required similar. And for that, we have started motivating them to get their data, and they gather the data, they understand that yes, these are the similarities, these are the farmers who are similar to us, and they get together and decide on purchasing data. So our founder always say that we are poor, but we are so many. And organized strength is the one that helped them to develop their bargaining power to go together for the purchases and get the benefit of the data. Secondly, the smallholder farmers are buying inputs which are not viable, and so data of the villages and clusters helps. Together with that, the data of even there are larger, as I say, 2.5 million farmers. So we have started as a pilot for some geographical areas. So there are larger farmers who are producing maybe the food items, maybe the cash crops, maybe for their own inputs, and how we can connect their produce and link with the market. So we have initiated a Rudy Multi-Trading Company, which is a producer-owned company, and this company mainly buys the products which are grown by the smallholder farmers, and there are data gathered that which are the farmers. These groups are linked with this company, and the data of these groups help the Rudy Multi-Trading Company to decide on which are the commodities, where are those commodities, and where to buy, what are the rates, and that help them to use the data for linking with the mainstream market, the women with the market. So with that, and to make these organized strength, these pilots happen successfully, we need these gender data. As I said, we have initiated collecting data at certain geographic occasions, and to include informal sector women workers and small and women farmers data, farm workers data, entrepreneurs and informal sector urban workers data who are part of the food system supply chain, to be part of the data gathering, understanding the data, own it, use it, and strengthen that trade and strengthen supply chain to forge the partnerships and food and nutrition security. Unless and until we are including the poor and the women in whole process, gender database will not be created. Owned, since they are unaccounted force of economy. They are not organized as worker, as a farmer. Digital financial inclusion of the informal sector women will help them to be part of the process of generating data. Access to digital equipments with first-hand training on data gathering, analyzing, and using is vital. The decentralized data collection, analysis, and usage helps in strengthening the decentralized food supply chains. Agriculture and animal husbandry are also one of the emitters of the carbon, and to include informal sector women to be part of the climate market through climate adaptation and mitigation at the community level, it requires data to reach out to market. In some of the aspects, data of farmers also help farmers' organization to provide data on early warning against climate shocks. Thus, there is urgent need of data collection on part of the climate impact on the loss of life, climate and health issues, loss and damage of livelihoods, and currently there are no such data available. The data and evidences will help in advocating for the gender equality and ensure data dissemination and usage by the women in informal economy. Understandably, the importance of gendering data, and SEWA had started digitizing and structuring the membership of grassroots leaders. So with that, I'll end here with the one logo that how we can include the women in data collection, data inclusion, the informal sector women. So they are of course the data generators, but also the data users, analyzers, and taking part in the decision making. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you so much for providing the perspective of the smallholder woman farmer in India. And I think your perspective is likely representative of many smallholder farmers across the world. So thank you so much. And now over to you, Christopher, for the USAID's perspective. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Marithi, Ms. Luger, and my fellow panelists. Excited to be here. Like Jose, I'm also a data person, so happy to be jumping into this conversation. As has been mentioned, my name is Chris Hillbrunner. I lead an analysis, data, and learning division within USAID's Bureau for Resilience, Environment, and Food Security. Among many other roles, this is the Bureau which coordinates Feed the Future, which is the US government's $2 billion a year effort to reduce extreme poverty, hunger, and malnutrition. So building on some of the earlier comments, I'd like to highlight a few key points. The first is that I'd like to emphasize the importance of investing in the production of high quality food security and nutrition data. These data are a critical public good, and donors and national governments need to collaborate and think strategically about how to sustainably finance these efforts. Second, as we consider how to finance these efforts, we need to balance the utility of collecting this data against the burden that these data collection efforts can have on respondents, including farmers. This means thinking about things like streamlined survey modules, piggybacking on existing data collection efforts rather than starting new data collection programs, and committing to share the data that we have available. And to share it in a timely way and to share it with a wide range of stakeholders. Along these lines, USAID has recently overhauled the way we approach the food security surveys that we implement directly, to reduce the length of the surveys by 1/3 and implement new strategies and processes for sharing those data more widely with relevant stakeholders. As my fellow panelists just mentioned, it's also critical that these data are sex disaggregated. The Feed the Future has recently set 5 ambitious new performance targets for the initiative, and there's 2 of them that I'd like to highlight here. First, we aim to achieve gender parity in access to finance among Feed the Future participants by the year 2030. At the same time, our ambition is that a majority of women in the areas where we work consume a nutritious diet. These goals illustrate the commitment of USAID to building women's empowerment and closing gender gaps. But our collective ability to monitor progress and appropriately steer our programming related to these types of goals requires that we collect sex disaggregated data across multiple levels and multiple sectors where we work, something that is too often not done. Finally, Simply collecting these data is not enough. Our efforts must include an explicit focus on building local capacity, especially for data use. Too frequently, the bulk of our effort and investment focuses on generating information, and we don't do enough to support the use of this evidence in driving policy and decision-making. Ultimately, the sustainability of food security and nutrition data systems will be driven by the degree to which local stakeholders see the value in these data and use them in their work. The 50 by 2030 initiative, which hosted a side event this morning that I hope you were able to attend, is a great example of an initiative that we support that deliberately links data generation, data use, and local capacity building at scale. So to close, I would encourage all of us as we launch the CFS policy recommendations on data for food security and nutrition to consider how we finance these data needs, how we collect and use these data more efficiently, the need for gender and sex disaggregated data, and perhaps most importantly, how we ensure that our efforts to generate data are complemented by appropriate investment in building capacity for data use. Thank you for your time, and I'll hand it back to Ms. Lugar.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for highlighting the critical issues that you discussed. Really important, thank you. And now we will hear from Mark and your perspective from a large private sector company, Syngenta.
Thank you, Ellen, and good afternoon to everybody. It's great to be here today. And first, before I start, perhaps I should congratulate you, Anthony, and all the delegations involved in the fabulous work in CFS in this space. So really, thank you for your stewardship of the issues. I need to confess, I'm not a data guy, but I'm privileged to work in a company that has 59,000 employees, and we have many absolutely fantastic data guys. So I'm representing their collective efforts today, but more so I'm representing the Digital Agriculture Association, which is a collective of academia and industry working in the multilateral institutions to help inform the policymakers on digital agriculture issues. Of course, we're there to help farmers make informed decisions, and it's really a great privilege to be in front of you today in Rome. I thought I'd mix it up. So over the next few minutes, I'll show you some examples of the power of data on farm and what it can do. And the examples I've chosen are from Syngenta, but this is just a snapshot of what's happening in a very exciting, innovative field. So the examples I'll go through are based on soil, climate, biodiversity, and importantly, productivity, which is absolutely essential for food security, which is the focus of our main discussions. So yes, please, Rose. So I'll start off with soil on the next slide, please. And this is pretty revolutionary. It's a passive scanning technology that through very smart algorithms and check samples, validation samples, produces incredibly rich data on soil. And it's better to hear from my colleague who developed this program. So we've got a very short 1-minute video where Mark Hall, who has a very similar name to me, and I get all of his emails, but they're more interesting than mine, but he'll now explain how this scheme works. Please, Rose.
InterraScan in a nutshell is a precision soil analysis service. It gives growers accurate data about the variation of their soils across 27 layers of information, from macronutrients to micronutrients to soil texture to organic matter and carbon. It enables them to vary applications and optimize applications of lime, of fertilizers, of organic manures, and of seed.
Detection technology provides high-definition mapping of all common nutrient properties, including pH, soil texture, organic matter, carbon and cation exchange capacity, as well as elevation and plant available water. InterraScan takes over 800 data reference points per hectare, showing more details and geospatial differences than any other mapping technique currently on the market. It's like an equivalent of an all-round medical checkup, but for soil.
Thanks, Rose. So maybe we could go to the next slide. And that's the range of data that can be produced. And this is really fundamentally important for farmers as stewards of the land so that they can make informed decisions on how to manage their major asset in the soil. I was talking to Kyle earlier about the importance that farmers attach to the land stewardship and the care and management that they put to that. This sort of data set can really help improve the longevity and stewardship of the whole farm for multiple generations, and importantly and excitingly can help with identifying carbon capture in the soil, which can be used to generate other markets and help with climate mitigation. And as we're on the theme of climate, maybe Rose, we can move to the next slide, please. We also have an offer called AgriClime, which is based on more than 20 years of atmospheric data modeling and on-farm modeling. And this provides a whole package where farmers use Syngenta protocols to optimize their crop yields. And if there are unforeseen climatic issues that are going to affect the yield or quality of the crop, there are financial payouts to help the farmer mitigate and adapt to climate change and the impact on yield. So it's a way of using predictive modeling to give farmers certainty in the marketplace. And Rose, if we could move to the next slide, and I think the slide after is the video. There's another short video also on biodiversity modeling, which is another of the major challenges that farmers are faced with, and that we collectively have a responsibility with looking at stewarding the environment. And part of that is baselining the data on farm and understanding biodiversity on farm. So please, Rose, if we could move forward. Next slide, please. And I'll conclude the examples of what data can do and how data-fed systems can help. So this is our CropWise technology, which provides hugely powerful modeling for farmers. Kyle was talking about how data is essential to his operation, the operation of many farmers. It's equally applicable to mega and smallholder farmers who need access to the data-driven services, either direct or through government services, or through increasingly we see small service providers in some markets, but access is a fundamental principle. These sort of services can help choose the correct crop to plant for a given season, use meteorological data, can minimize inputs and costs and overheads, can optimize yields, can optimize environmental performance. So really very powerful systems that rely on data sharing, collaboration, and importantly, access to the internet in rural areas. And if we can move to my final slide. So this is the view from us in the Digital Agriculture Association. We have principles of data control, transparency and fairness. There's a lot of concern about ownership of data. The farmer should own their data, and any commercial interactions should be through fair contracting provisions. It should be clear, transparent, not opaque terms and conditions. Any changes to privacy should be very clear. And there should be trust, which enables the data flow and the data sharing, which is so powerful in making a difference in the agricultural environment. And really what we need, or what we see would be really helpful in the policymaking environment, is basic access. In many rural landscapes, there's very patchy or non-existent access to the internet, poor bandwidth, and in some parts of the world, some places, there's not electricity to power the tools in the first place. So there has to be fundamentally infrastructure and bandwidth in place, and then that enables real-time data sharing, rapid data analysis, collaboration that can help with public and private collaboration that can help with farmers' productivity everywhere. We also see the need for rapid response mechanisms, so that where events that can be modeled are coming along, different data sets can be brought together and inform the approach to mitigation for disruptive events. That can help significantly with what can be catastrophic and business-ending events in some farming communities. And we need policymakers to enable the transition. We need access to the technology in the farming environment, and perhaps subsidy, perhaps aid, perhaps finance is the key here, as well as the basic infrastructure. But that's something we can discuss as the panel goes forward. So with those thoughts, I'll conclude, and thank you very much. Back to you, Ellen.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you for sharing with us the power of data. Very impressive. And now I will turn it over to Jose, who will moderate the conversation that we hope to continue.
No, thank you, Ellen, and hello to all of you again. And now we're going to start the segment of questions and answers. And it will be my privilege to make the first round of questions, and then we will open the floor for you to have the second round of questions. So let me start the questions addressing the important aspect of data use. Because even if we recognize that, that we have in the area of food security and nutrition several data gaps, especially in developing countries, we also live in some kind of ironic situations in which even if the data is potentially available, we don't have, or sometimes even farmers or governments or any type of stakeholder face this situation in which they don't have access to this data. And that can be explained by different type of reasons, okay? Physical impossibility to have access to the data, or probably you have the data there, but you don't know how to use it. You don't have the capacities in order to be able to unlock the power of data. So having that in mind, my first question will be to Chris, okay? And the question is the following: can you share in your experience, specific examples on how improved data has driven improved decision making from, again, your lessons learned? Chris, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So I think there's two examples that I'd highlight. The first is the Space to Place initiative, which is a USAID funded activity that's currently starting in Southern Africa, but one that we hope to expand. And I think it speaks directly to the point that Jose was making, that there are, in many cases, data available in the world that are not available to smallholder farmers. And in this case in particular, the gap that we recognized was the importance of hyperlocal information on the characteristics of farmer fields to help refine and improve fertilizer and other input recommendations. And so the purpose of the Space to Place initiative is to connect, hyper-local information on elevation and slope, along with hyper-local information on soil conditions, to farmers and extension agents to improve the quality of the fertilizer input and soil health interventions that farmers are implementing on their fields. So again, a good example of not new data necessarily, but putting in place a process to facilitate the connection of the right data to farmers and inform their decisions. Another example, more at a global level, that I would highlight relates to our big effort to push for sex disaggregated data in the programming we fund. So just as a small example, in 2020, every year we collect a wide range of information from our implementing partners on the promotion of improved agricultural practices. And while we want sex disaggregated data, we don't always get it. And so in 2020, as an example, only about 70% of the data we had was sex disaggregated. And that really limited our ability to analyze the data and use it to inform future programming and programmatic steers. So there's been a big internal push within Feed the Future to improve the level of sex disaggregation. And in 2022, the most recent year that we have this data for, our level of sex disaggregation has risen to 95%. And so really investing in having that sex disaggregated data has really improved our ability both at a central level, but also when we work with our country teams to really drive programming that aims to close the gender gaps that we have touched on earlier. Thanks.
No, thank you, Chris. I mean, I think that they are quite specific examples. But now let me turn to Mark, okay? Because Mark, in your presentation, you put there quite few examples, okay, in terms of technologies that can be used to generate data and improve the life of farmers. But at the same time, and this is my question to you, how can data use capacity be supported, okay? What might we collectively do to further capacity building in the area? Floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Jose. Thanks for those questions. Well, I think the first thing is we have to work together. We have to understand the farmer needs, and farmers are a very, very diverse group of people with very diverse needs. So I think understanding their needs, their concerns, and making sure that we work collaboratively in the public and private sectors to meet their needs so they can optimize their farming practices. I think collaboration is really key to this. And I think the FAO has great convening power. There's the hand-in-hand initiative. And I think informing that process further with data would be very strong. I think there's also public-private partnerships elsewhere in the world, things like the Farm to Market Alliance in Africa, or modern agricultural platforms that we have in Syngenta in some parts of the world to bring technology to smallholders is important. So there are individual commercial interventions, I think, and there are individual governmental interventions, but the most powerful thing is when we all come together and collaborate, listen to the farmers, understand their needs, and then meet them.
No, thank you very much, Mark. I think that is loud and clear your call for partnerships. Together we are more and better. So now let me move to the topic of data governance, because now and we see every single day that we have a number of actors, okay? Even if these actors are state actors or non-state actors that are playing a role in food security and nutrition data. And this number is growing, okay? Especially with the data revolution, we have more and more people that can contribute and play a role in food security and nutrition data. But in order to engage and unlock the power of the data, we have to ensure inclusiveness in the access of this data. And for that to happen, data needs to be open, but at the same time, we need to be mindful of protecting the privacy of the data. Considering that, my question to Kyle, okay, right now I go to Kyle, is do you have any recommendations on how we might collectively achieve this balance, okay, that must exist between open data and privacy? Back to you.
Sure, I appreciate the question. Sure, there's a lot of ways to protect the privacy and have data open and available to the people that need it. I think having several different data exchanges where people that want to buy and purchase the data or want to set up a relationship with a farmer or a group of farmers or maybe an entire collective of farmers, having those exchanges available for the data is important. That way, the farmer is able to review how their data will be used, how it'll be accessed, how long it'll be accessed. The farmer will be able to ensure that they have access to their own data. And with that, the people that want to use it, whether it's government bodies, developers, people in the supply chain, they'll have ready access to it in real time as soon as it's made. On our farm, we have several relationships where that's exactly the case. Sometimes we'll do a trial on farm, and the people that we're trialing their product for, they'll want real-time access to the data as it's being developed in the field. So we develop partnerships with them where they have logins, and as soon as the machine collects the data, it's all cloud-based, and they can access it as quickly as it's available. But something like that requires a lot of transparency. It requires an agreement on the front end, and it requires some general terms and guidelines for both parties, not just the producer, but also the person buying.
Oh, thank you, Kyle, for bringing this perspective that is very much a farmer sector perspective. Now let me turn to Mega, okay? And we have discussed already, and we have heard about the data gaps that exist on food security and nutrition. And there are different types of data gaps. There are geographical or territorial data gaps. There are also gaps from the information that we have in the different levels of the value chain, right? I think that we have much more information in the extremes at the farm level and in the consumer level, but very little on what happened in between the value chain. But one of the most important ones, of course, and you have referred to, is the one that refer to groups of population, especially the gender gaps in the data. So my question is the following: can you speak to the ways that gender disaggregated data will support the kind of work that you do? Can you elaborate a little bit more on the points that you have already made? Back to you.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, very first thing, that the gender disaggregated data, the gaps are there, of course, but if we motivate the informal sector, farmers, youth, or women, and train on data collection, of course we can get, because they are part of the food supply chain. Women are almost having equal partnership in the food supply chain. And the data gathered will bring out the contribution of women, farmers, and the food system workers in the food supply chain. Currently, they are not visible. The data will bring their visibility and bring their status. And through that, it will help in making the policies for the women to how to strengthen their food, how to strengthen their trade in the food supply chain. And secondly, it will bring also the accesses which is required to strengthen their farming. So very first and important thing, how we can make the women data entrepreneurs from the informal sector, how we can build their capacity, how we can make them have access to those digitalized tools so they can be part of the data supply chain, and that's how they can be part of the food supply chain, strengthening the policies and the programs. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mega. And this ends the first round of questions. And now we go to the second round that is for you to make questions to our panelists. So here I have already one hand raised. Can you please say your name, the organization in which you belong, and to which panelists you are addressing the question, or if you are doing it to all of them? That is also possible. Huh? Go ahead.
It's working. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dan Ubongo from Embassy of Republic of South Sudan. Thank you for your presentation all. I have just two questions for my sister from India. One, you mentioned something related to that the men are migrating to urban areas. So what motivates them to migrate there? Secondly, what is the percentage of the women who are using digitals in their farming? Thank you very much. Thank you, moderator, for the chance.
Thank you. Is it okay if I already collect another
Sure.
question? Please, the gentleman in the back.
Thanks a lot. Tommaso Ferrando from the University of Antwerp. I have a question for all people who are sitting there, including the moderator and the chair of the working group, because I heard from Mr. Hilbrunner, he used the notion of data as a public good. And when I hear public good, I have something in mind. And so I was wondering whether that idea of data as a public good is something that is shared among the people who are sitting there, and what you mean with the notion of data as a public good. And in particular, I think about the ownership of the data that is produced, and whether with the idea of public good, you mean that data should be open access, available to everyone, that the databases should be not restricted to people who pay for the services, and definitely not exclusively used by the companies that eventually end up with those data. And if that's not the case, I think that we could not talk about data as public goods, and we should just talk about data as commodities or data as private property, which is a very different scenario. Thanks.
Thank you. I don't see more hands, so in the meantime that you decide to raise a question, let me go back to the panelists. Let's start with Mega, because one question or two questions were specifically addressed to you.
Sure. So thank you for your questions. The first question is what is the motivation for male to migrate? So for smallholder farmers, their generations are into farming. And as I said, they are rain-fed farmers, small land, and each family have 2 to 3 sons. So small land again divided among them. So, and they do not have accesses. So agriculture has been non-lucrative. And that is why they go to urban areas in search of work. They are again part of the informal sector even in urban areas, but at least it gives them sustainable income when they are doing some job. So that is one thing why they migrate. But during the COVID, when everything was stopped and agriculture was the only one which was feeding, they understood the value of agriculture. Second question is on what percentage of women they are generating data or using the data. So that is also a very good question. And I feel that during COVID as well, we could link the smallholder farmers with the market. It happened, the lockdown in our country happened at the time when there was a harvest to go to market. And secondly, the farmers had to buy the inputs, the seed and all for the next season. And at that time, lockdown happened. But thanks to digitalization and the data that our leaders have in the villages, we could gather the data and we could help them to link to the market with, of course, the approvals for the government. So if I talk about SEVA, 2.5 million women members, we have a program for digital inclusion. We have a program for data collection. So we have leaders who buy on loan smartphones and gather the data and start collecting the data. It has been initiated on pilot from Gujarat. where we started from, and slowly we are going to other regions as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mega. Let me now go to the panelists for the second question. I don't know who wants to address that. Please.
Sure, I agree with you. I think ag data is a public good, and it currently is. Receipts from ag sales are very relevant in the conversation of food security. Ag data gives a great idea of where we stand as far as producers. Will we have enough food? Who will have enough? Who will have excess? How do we manage the logistics to make sure that we provide as much food as possible to anyone who needs it? So I think all of that, any ag data sales receipts are collected by the government and they're used as a public good. I think anything that would be proprietary to farmers is something that is specific towards the growing process pre-sale. So something that is beyond the sale of the good that's being certified, and something that is proprietary to the production practice. Any of that type of data should be something that can be marketed and sold as in more of an R&D space.
Anyone of the panelists to complement that? Okay, no, I mean, I do believe that there is some kind of delicate balance, okay, between data being open and being inclusive, and of course the protection of the data, okay, and the confidentiality of the data. It is not a simple topic, okay, the issue of trying to find this delicate balance, but at the same time, we believe that data has to serve the public good as best as it is possible. Okay, let me see if there is any other question from the floor. Please, we take that one and we close.
One of the big, Paul Temple, I'm here with the Global Farming Network and I farm in the UK. One of the biggest problems we have is the way data is trusted. I'm fortunate to understand how good the data the USDA produces, and yet you'll go on social media just after they release figures and there's a great flurry of we don't trust the data. I'm really nervous that when we move into more carbon accounting, that data isn't trustworthy. And particularly when we're putting a lot of this out on social media in forms of how it's discussed these days, how do you as organizations set about defending data? And the final point I just want to make is I use 3 different software programs for my various farm. 2 of those systems have subsequently shut and I've lost data. It's irretrievable. And they're saying basically, we're putting you on the cloud. I am hugely nervous about everybody glibly mentions the cloud without mentioning whether this is secure or safe or what it could lead to. So how confident are you in the security of putting all this data on the cloud?
Thank you very much. Very interesting questions. Let me go back to the panelists if someone of you want to attempt a response. Okay, let's go first with Chris, then with Mark.
So on the first question about defending data, this is certainly an issue that comes up at times, and I think 2 strategies that we use to build confidence in our data. One is being as transparent as we can about the methods that we're using to collect the data, who's involved in that data collection, etc. And the second is making our data available to anyone who wants to interrogate and investigate that data for themselves. So that's true for both annually reported data that we get from our implementing partners and for the surveys that we conduct. So I think transparency is sort of the main watchword.
Thank you, Jose. Paul, I think trust is fundamentally important in the data, and it's the old adage, if you put rubbish in, you get rubbish out. So the quality of data has to be important, has to be correct to ensure that the value is realized on the usage of that data downstream. Within the industry, we're carrying out a lot of work on standards, security, validation, audit for data. And I think as those standards evolve, those voluntary standards evolve, we'd welcome policymaker consideration and perhaps endorsement of these standards that then gives faith in the data to downstream users like yourself and other farmers, Paul.
Oh, thank you. Probably to complement that, okay, transparency. Transparency, I think that is the key factor, okay, that allow us, all of us, to defend our data. So if we are transparent, we can both parties can understand basically the methods that are being used. And also if you have the mechanism in order to revise the information, accept errors, if there is the case that you have to accept errors, that's also a good practice as well, that can create trust to our users. Having said that, I think that it is my time to thank the panelists and also all of you. Just let me, in order to close this session, just give me a couple of seconds just to try to elevate a little bit about the importance of this process that has happened in CFS at the moment that we have elevated the topic of data inside of the CFS discussions. Because I cannot stress more that what we have done, okay, in the CFS, in all the process of elevating data, also in producing these policy recommendations that are going to be discussed in a minute, is quite a unique experience. To have a body that is a political body, that is not a technical body, it's not full of statisticians or data people, okay? So it's a political body, an intergovernmental and international type of body, discussing about the importance of data, on what are the specific aspects of data that are relevant, such as data use, how important is to fill the data gaps and also to increase our investments in food security and nutrition data. It has been quite remarkable and quite a successful experience. I have been in the statistical community in the last 11 years at the international level. And again, believe me when I say that this is quite a unique experience, okay? I do believe that we have a brighter future for food security and nutrition because of this. And I hope that all of you share my optimism on this. Thank you very much for your participation on this side event. Thank you for the panelists. Let's all of us give us a round of applause. Have a good afternoon.